I'm Stephanie Jordan. I'm the local food program manager with Sustainable Solano. And as you can see, I'm also a chef. I had a catering business in Chicago for about 8 years before moving out here in 2011. And one thing led to another, and I ended up getting involved with Sustainable Solano. It all started with a meeting about a kitchen, because I was looking for a shared kitchen to use for catering stuff. I never really found one, but ended up working with the organization since then. So this cooking demo that we're doing is one of many that we are doing between now and March of 2022. So roughly 2 years, we'll be doing these cooking demonstrations around the county. Right now we're doing them virtually. Hopefully we'll be back to doing them live and in person. And it's part of a specialty crop project that we're doing. And the purpose is to raise awareness of specialty crops that are grown by our local farmers here in Solano County. And a specialty crop are basically things that we eat. It's fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, culinary herbs. There's also some nursery products like flowers and, you know, shrubbery and things that you would plant, but we're really focusing on the edibles for this series. And it is supported by the California Department of Food and Agriculture and also the USDA. So that is what this is about. And this is also part of our larger vision to create a more sustainable and resilient local food system in Solano County. There's a lot more on these projects on our website, which you can find on the local food page at sustainablesolano.org. So welcome everyone. So we've done a handful of classes, and we found that there were a lot of questions and curiosities around knife skills and kind of some kitchen basic items. So we're gonna tackle a bunch of different kinds of knives and some different equipment today. And I'm gonna go through some of the specialty crops that are growing right now. I rummaged through my CSA box and pulled a few things. And we'll do some, I'm gonna show how to cut those efficiently, because I find that, you know, a lot of, because specialty crops are a lot of vegetables and fruits, you know, it's sometimes a little bit daunting to start new recipes without really knowing how to efficiently and quickly chop it up or slice it or whatever. So I have a variety of equipment here that we'll walk through kind of, you know, as we go through the different vegetables. I'm just doing vegetables and maybe a couple fruits right now because there's not a lot of fruit that's in season right now. The berries are just starting. The citrus is out there, but winding down. Well, I say winding down. I have a Meyer lemon tree that's like rocking and rolling back there. Gonna grab one more thing here before I forget. So, yeah, and then we'll do, after I chop and dice a few things, we will go through just a really simple recipe to make some quick pickled vegetables, and then that'll be it. Then we'll take questions. So, as Allison mentioned, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we will address questions toward the end, and she can either read them for you or she can unmute you, and then we can do it live, Q&A, which is always more fun for me than just reading questions. So, okay, let's start with the setup, all right? So I have a variety of cutting boards that I'll show you, but under my cutting board are these. So this is, I'm not sure if this is shelf liner. I've had this for so long. It could be shelf liner. It's a little bit spongy. I actually think it's those pads you put underneath small rugs in your house between like a hardwood floor and the rug to keep it from slipping around. The only reason I have two is because this is a larger cutting board and I couldn't find my larger pad, but I have a variety of sizes of these things. If you don't want to order this or deal with this, you can also use a damp paper towel, although then you're using up resources. So I tend to have a few of these things around my house, and I put them underneath my cutting board, which is going to keep my cutting board from sliding around. So you should be able to like push on your board pretty firmly and have it not go anywhere, because when you're cutting, you want this to be super stable. I will also make a comment that underneath my feet is one of those big squishy mats. I'm not sure of the brand, but you can find them pretty much anywhere. I ordered a couple on Amazon. You know, my knees are kind of not the greatest after cooking for 15 years. So, you know, you want to be comfortable. Okay, so that's the board. And then this board, by the way, is a teak board, which is great because teak, as we know, can hold up to moisture. And so it does need to be oiled on occasion. And you can use any kind of butcher block oil, just do a thin layer. Because I do wash my board. I don't let it, I don't chop something and then just put it away. I always wash it with dish soap, make sure it's thoroughly dry, and then I would oil it probably every week or two, depending on how much I use it. I can usually get by for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, depending, because I kind of cycle through a variety of different boards. These I have in a few different sizes. The company who makes these is called Epicurean, and it was originally sort of an aha moment when someone discovered that you can make cutting boards out of skateboard ramp material. I'm pretty sure the company is in Minnesota somewhere, and the good thing about these Epicurean boards is, number one, they're lightweight. They're pretty thin, they're lightweight, they don't absorb bacteria or odors as much as maybe a wooden board would, and also you can put these in the dishwasher, which is kind of a bonus. So if you want to reserve a couple of them, I have one that's a little bit bigger. Actually, it's drying over here. So, I have one that's this size, which I can fit in my dishwasher. So I might use this one for like raw meats and such, and then I can put it in the dishwasher on like a sanitized setting, and it holds up fine. These have been run through the dishwasher multiple times, and there's no warping, which is one thing that can happen. They will get worn down eventually. I have a third one, and I can tell that there's like a dip starting to happen in the middle of it because it's been used so much. But these are handy. They also come in black. They're available just about anywhere right now. I think Bed Bath & Beyond has them. I'm sure you can find them on Amazon and just about anywhere. So again, here's the Epicurean boards. And then the other one I found is a bamboo board. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I think I've had this for 20 years and it's still holding up. I couldn't tell you where I got it, but if you can find a good quality bamboo, this is also a great option. So I'm going to use the teak one today because it's larger. I do have a really gigantic Epicurean one, but I'm not going to drag that out. But that's something that I would like carve a turkey on or something. It's like, maybe 3 feet across. Okay, so that's all about the boards. You can also get plastic boards, and there's some really thin plastic ones that I've seen that people might use. Again, those would be fine kind of in a pinch. I wouldn't recommend it for long-term chopping and stuff. The plastic will start to get grooves in it, which can then trap bacteria. So I'm not a big fan of plastic boards. However, you probably could put them in the dishwasher, but they do get beat up pretty fast. So I think that's, yeah, I do have a few plastic ones and they're kind of tucked away. I don't really use them that often. Okay, so let's move on to knives. So I drug out a lot of different kinds of knives, which I'm going to show you. There's really about 3 or 4 that I recommend having if you had to get a few and you wanted to kind of get started. This is your first one that you want to get, and it's a chef knife. I'll try and hold it out here. Henkel's makes these, Wusthof makes them, Global makes them, although they're a little bit different, and I'll explain why in a minute. This is the one that I got in my knife kit at culinary school, and I've just had it ever since, and it's held up great. So as you can see, there's like 3 parts to it. There's the handle here, which has some rivets. Those are something to look for when you're buying a knife. And then the bolster is this middle part here, and then of course you have the blade. So, and I'll show how to use this in a minute. I'm just going to walk through the different knives right now. This is kind of like my workhorse. I use this every day on a variety of different things. I probably wouldn't use it on something really tiny, for that I would grab a paring knife. But for most of the vegetable prep that I do on a weekly basis, this is what I would use. A bread knife, everybody should have a bread knife. Long blade, serrated edge, for cutting through bread. I find these really handy for cutting through artichokes too, if any of you love artichokes. Artichokes have really tough leaves, and so before you like roast them or steam them or whatever, you want to cut off the tops, and I found it really handy for sawing off like the top third of the artichoke before you then have it and scoop out the choke and all of that part. So so anyway, that's the bread knife. Next in line I would recommend is just a paring knife. So your basic small little paring knife. This one happens to be a Global brand, which is a Japanese company that makes them. They're kind of known for there's a pattern on the handle, which you probably can't see too well, but it's got little tiny black dots, but the whole thing is metal. So it's like cut from one piece of metal. There's no rivets and binding together of plastic handle and metal like you have on these other knives. The thing about the global knives is that they were modeled after samurai swords, and so they tend to be thinner on their blades and very sharp edges. And what I would use a global knife for, if I had like the choice, is if I wanted to cut vegetables super thin and make like shavings of something, then a global would work for that. Not to say that it wouldn't work with your standard, you know, chef knife over here, but that's kind of their claim to fame, is thin blades which can cut really thin, fine vegetables. Okay, next I have a slicer. Here's one type, and then I have another one which also a slicer. It's a different brand, so it's a little smaller. The purpose of the slicer is for basically slicing meat. So you have a really long blade, which is kind of meant to go like in and out and be done with your slice. That way you're not sawing away at the meat product. So that's what this is. And then again, here's another brand. It's a little smaller, but it has a thinner, as you can see if you're comparing these two. You know, the chef knife has a much wider blade than the slicer. The slicer has kind of a thinner, you know, thinner up and down, not necessarily width-wise. Okay, and then after that, I just have a smaller paring knife, you know, so let me back up a little bit. So the main four, I would say you want, is a chef knife, a bread knife, a paring, and a slicer. And I would probably go in that order, you know. This is one, your slicer, if you're not a big meat eater, you can get by with one of these other knives, fine. But if, you know, you find yourself slicing up, you know, flank steak off the grill or the turkey or the ham or whatever, then it's good to have this type of a knife. Okay, and then I have just another serrated knife. It's a little smaller. You know, this would be handy for tomatoes. You know, the tomatoes are smaller, like cherry tomatoes. This is probably when I pulled this little guy out. It's bigger than a paring knife. It's smaller than a, you know, a chef knife or a slicer. So it's just kind of a medium-sized serrated. I'm not sure what this is, to be honest with you. I think this is one that my husband brought along when we got married. So this is just kind of a medium-sized thing. You know, again, I would say this is helpful if your hands are smaller and this feels more comfortable. The ideal size on the chef knife, you know, sometimes some are 6-inch, some are 8-inch, some are 10-inch. The most popular is the 8-inch, which is probably what this is, and it really comes down to what feels most comfortable to you. I would highly recommend going to a store that has a lot of these different kinds, and, you know, having the sales, well, when we can go out, you know, have them get it out so that you can feel it, feel the weight, see how your hand holds it and fits it, and how does it feel. I actually have, here's another one of my chef knives. This is a different company, and so you can see the handle is a little thicker up here, and it's a little more ergonomically cut. So, you know, for some people that might feel more comfortable in your hand. So it's really about comfortable, because this, you want this tool to become kind of an extension of your hand while you're working. It sounds a little strange, but that's your goal. And the last one that I had that I wanted to show you, which is not going to be a really, you know, must-have, but this is a boning knife. So you'll see that the blade kind of has a little dip here. So after the bolster, there's a part that comes up and then across and up. So this is if you're, you know, trying to bone out chicken or something where you have to maneuver around, you know, a bone to get the meat off. Not something that you would use very regularly. If you had to like fillet a fish, you know, I would say either, if I had to choose from my assortment here, I would get probably this slicer, which is actually a little bit flexible, because, you know, I can actually bend this a little bit when I push it on my cutting board. My chef knife is not budging, right? And so the purpose of this thinner blade, which is bendable, is when you're going around the fish, you want to be able to have it kind of flow along the spine of the fish and not be so rigid that you end up kind of cutting, you know, into the bone or too much into the flesh. So anyway, all right, that's that. Let's talk about sharpening. So I've shown this tool, I think, every class so far, because everyone has questions about sharpening. This is what I have. I'll bring it over here so you can see. And I'm not sure where, well, I got this from a little retailer in Chicago back when I used to work there. It's called Mino Sharp Plus Universal Sharpener. We sold a lot of these things at Flavor Cooking School back in Chicago because they were recommended for both global knives and a lot of the German-made knives, like the Wüsthoffs and the Henkels of the world. So it's a pretty user-friendly tool, and it has, I'll bring the actual piece over here too, if I'm not tricky. So here it is, and it's got two little porcelain, I don't know if they're, no, they're probably ceramic. There's two little round stones inside here. There's a white one, which is here, which is more coarse, and then there's a pink one here, which is the fine one. And then it's just a little handle. So all I'm gonna do is put a little bit of water. There's an opening here where the knife's gonna go. So I'm gonna put a little bit of water in here just to moisturize it. Just a quick in and out. Okay. So basically, I have a little sharpening stone with this thing. So I'm gonna put these things away for right now so that I don't hurt myself. Move them. And I'm gonna just go through, I'll sharpen my chef knife. All right, and then after this, we'll talk about the honing steel, which is here. So, so if your knife is feeling pretty dull, you know, you can get out this little thing. And so I'm just gonna run through the white stone first, because you want to do the coarse one first. And I'm just gonna go in and out like 5 or 6 times, back and forth. Okay, and I'll go. So you want to keep it as upright as possible and just go straight through. Then the next step is to wash this off, because I don't want to mix any of the coarse stone into the fine, which is my next step. Okay, I'm going to dry this off. Okay, and then same routine with the fine stone, which is the pink colored one. Okay. And again, I'm going to rinse it off. There's always going to be some little bits of metal or something that comes off when you're sharpening, so you always want to give it a rinse after you've done those steps. Okay, that feels pretty good. What you could do also is a honing steel. So kind of on like your everyday basis as you work with your knives, you might need to just do a little tune-up, which you would use with your honing steel. So this is not exactly how I would recommend honing it, but I just want to show you kind of the angle that you need. So you want to get it at about a 20-ish degree angle. So here's 45, right? And then half of that is roughly the 20 that you are looking for. So, you know, some people do it this way, but it's a little awkward for me to do it this way with my right hand. So I kind of learned to do it like this, which I know looks scary because I'm going toward me, but there's a little guard thing here. So you just want to hold it up and go back and forth, and, you know, maybe 3 or 4 times. You're not doing this for a long time. So that is just to get your blade, again, so out of habit, I'm going to wipe it down. This is just to kind of give your blade a tune-up. As you're working and you find that the honing steel is not helping, then you would go to this tool to get the edge, you know, ground down a little bit more. And there may come a time when this doesn't work so well anymore because the bevel on your knife is toast. So then you need to take it to a knife sharpener person and have them regrind and put a new bevel on your knife. So that's kind of the progress. But you know, daily basis, try this, and then, you know, every couple of weeks or however often you need, go to the little stone thing. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, maybe I'll walk through some other equipment that I just kind of use all the time. Those of you that have been on my classes are familiar with this little gadget. This is one of my favorite kitchen toys. It is a pastry scraper, also called a bench scraper. You'll see me use it as I'm cutting. It's helpful for scooping up little tiny bits of things like sticky garlic or sticky ginger or chopped herbs. So I use this, you know, once, if I'm going to work and cut things, I have the board, I have the knife, I have the scraper. I almost never start without the scraper. The other thing that I always have with me is a like scrap bucket or scrap bowls for all the vegetable stuff. You know, the leftover pieces and parts you don't need. So you don't want to work over a trash can if you can help it. So I have like a little, you know, composting bucket thing here. It's kind of over to the side, but that's always here because you want to be able to stick your scraps over there and your thing that you're chopping in a different bowl. All right, let's tackle the onion, everybody's favorite thing. So I have a red onion here. I'm hoping this shows up a little better than the white onion, but I have a white one too. I'm just taking off this skin because it's kind of falling off by itself and I just want to get it out of the way, but you don't necessarily have to do this. You can just dive in with the onion as is. So I'll do this with this onion and I have a couple more just because you might want to see it a couple times. So step one on the onion is leave the root intact. It's back here and it's going to help you, it's going to help hold together all the pieces and parts. So I'm going to do a diced onion. It's the same, you know, whether you're doing a large dice, medium dice, small dice, it's basically the same procedure. You're just doing a different size cut. So first step is I have this on my board and the root, okay, I'm right-handed. I'll preface it so you know kind of what to think about here. So if you're right-handed, the root is on my left and the top is on my right, okay? I'm going to cut off the top part of the onion, which is over here. And ooh, nice and sharp. Good deal. Okay, then I'm going to go straight through and I'm going to, I don't necessarily want to go through the root this way because there might be some dirt on the root. I'll try to move it over. Move it up a little bit. You guys can see. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it steadily sideways and just try to go straight through, but I want to get a little bit of root on each half. Okay, so here's what I have. So at this point now I would peel because I now have a corner that I can peel. So I'm just going to pretend this is my outer layer. I'm going to peel off my outer skin, which is the, you know, that kind of papery part. So we'll just pretend that that's out here. I'm going to pretend to peel that one. Okay. Now, the next step is, I wonder if I can, hold on, I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little. I can experiment here today with cameras and Zoom and whatnot. No. So it's easier if you guys can really see this. How's that? Allison, what do you think?
The picture is good. Say something. Your audio seems to have cut out a little.
Oh, my audio? How's this?
Now you sound good.
Now I'm good. Okay.
I think it's just being near the computer, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, I am closer to the computer. Okay, so step one. Now, I actually, sorry, I have to move my board so I don't hurt myself here. So my left hand is going to go on top of the onion like this. And I'm going to keep my fingertips straight up. And then my knife is going to go into the onion from the cut side toward the root. And I'm going to do it in like 3 or 4 cuts. So as you can see, here's what I'm doing. I'm starting to go through the onion. I'll kind of turn it a variety of different ways. So there's my first cut. I'm not going to go all the way through to the root. I'm going to swipe my knife out before I get to all the way to the root. Okay? Then I'm going to do the next cut up. These are probably about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch apart. Okay, so there's my second cut. I'm almost to the end, but I'm going to take my knife out before I get to the end. And I might have room for one more tiny little cut on top. Okay, so as you can see, everything is still holding together here. Nothing has really gotten cut from end to end yet. Okay, so that's step one. Step two is the root is now facing the top of my cutting board, and that top part is facing me. I'm going to stick my fingers on here, and we'll review more why in a minute. And then I'm going to go down through my onion from top to bottom, and I'm going to, again, swipe my blade out of the onion before I go through the root. Okay, so I'm going to try to, so here's where I'm at. I'm making these little cuts down, straight down, from top to bottom, and I'm sort of gliding my knife out toward me as I cut along. And you know, let your knife do the job. You know, you shouldn't have to apply a lot of pressure. If you're sliding your knife out, then it should just be cutting it kind of almost by itself, right? Okay, now step 3, I'm going to turn the onion back to its original position. So root is on my left and the cut part's on my right. I'm going to kind of hold all these layers together because they're starting to come apart a little bit. And I'm going to go straight down. And I'm making basically the same size cut in every direction. And if I do make the same size cut, then I have diced onion. Ta-da! And we should have pretty much the same size pieces. If there's a little spot at the end near the root that you can't really get to, just, you know, hack it off and add it to your mix and give it a little chop like this. You know, it's not worth trying to cut your fingers off to get that last bit of onion. Okay, I'm going to do it again with the other half. So let me throw this in a bowl. And this is a nice onion because my eyes are starting to water. So hopefully I can survive. Okay, here we go again. All right, so root is on my left. I'm holding this firmly on the cutting board. I'm actually pushing down to create some resistance. That way my onion is not sliding around. So I'm going to go in, and you saw I kind of had to do a little saw to get in there. Okay. This is the first cut. Getting a little slidey. That's okay. So I just want to pull that out. Okay, and then I turn it this way. I'm going straight down, making my cuts, sliding out the knife right before I get to the root. So my root is still more or less holding it together. I got a few stragglers that fell out. And now I'm holding it this way again, and I'm going straight down. And there's my dice. Okay, so here's something that can happen. If your onion is a little funky shaped, you're going to get to this point and it's going to be hard to like really go straight down anymore. So you want to flip it so that the part that you were just cutting is now down on the board, and you can kind of go at it from a sideways angle, and then you can flip it back over and then finish going through. Okay, and then here's where you might have these little random bits and pieces at the end. Okay, get rid of that. And then if there's a few pieces that didn't quite make it, you'll notice I'm changing the position in my hand a little bit here just to give that a little chop. Okay, so that is the onion. Any questions on the onion before we move on? The onion is always kind of like the tricky one, and I can, oh my gosh, my eyes are crying here. Okay, there it is. A little bit. Okay, about like that. Okay. Nope, I'm totally cut off. This is what Allison and I play with before we get on the call with you guys. Okay, something like that maybe is going to work. Okay, I'm a little cut off, but that's okay. Good enough. Okay, let me wash my hands. Okay, any questions about the onion?
There are no questions right now, but it's a good time to remind everyone you can throw a question in the chat or raise your hand, and the next time we pause for questions, happy to unmute you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let me grab one other thing over here. So the procedure that I use for the onion is also the same for shallots, which are smaller, so it's a little trickier, or a spring onion, which is like this. This is showing up right now. I would just cut off the top here. You can use these, you know, in kind of like you would use a scallion if you want, and then, you know, the bottom bulb you can just cut the same way. For garlic, we'll move on to garlic. So here's your basic head of garlic. Just want to kind of show you the best way to tackle this. I don't want to stand here and try to peel all this off. What I do with garlic is I take my knife and I give it a whack, and then that'll loosen the skin, and then I'm going to cut off the part at the bottom that would connect to the root, and then the shell just kind of pops right off, and I'm ready to go with my garlic. So that's what you can do with your garlic. Also, what's growing right now is green garlic. So this is like a young garlic head. It'll show up later in the store once it gets, dried. But what we're getting from the farmers right now is the young garlic, the green garlic. And as you can see, it looks just like a garlic head. So you can, this isn't going to have, I mean, once they get to this size, you might be able to find cloves inside. But for this, I would just cut off the root and cut the bulb. And then I'm just going to mince this up, and use it as if it were one big giant clove of fresh garlic. Okay, I can actually, this one is starting to get more mature. I can actually see some tiny little cloves starting inside there. So you can also use the green parts. You can use the whole thing if you want. The top parts are a little more tough, so I would recommend using those in like a saute or a marinade or something, whereas this will behave, the white part down here behaves pretty much like your cloves. Okay. All right, let's move on to long skinny things like carrots. Okay, and then I think I'm going to start my pickling liquid pretty soon here. Okay, so here is a carrot. Let me grab this one. All right, so for these kinds of things, you want to do a different kind. We all probably grew up watching people cut towards you, and that's not very efficient. So for this, we're going to cut in a different way. So I'm going to have my left hand to be like this, like a little crab. Think of a little crab walking on the beach. My fingers are bent, my knuckles are sticking out, and my fingertips are tucked under. So that's how I'm going to hold the carrot with this hand. With my right hand, I'm going to have my tip of the knife on the board, and I'm going to slice away, pick it up, drag the tip back, slice, pick it up, drag the tip back, slice away. So I'm not cutting toward me, I'm actually, the cutting motion is happening when I'm cutting away from me. So as you can see, if I turn this way, what you're going to notice is that my right hand is kind of going around in a circle. So slice, pick up, drag. The tip of the knife never leaves the board. So that's what you want to practice doing. And this is something that takes practice. So that's kind of the motion. And you'll see that, you can get speed going later on. Whoop, there goes my carrot rounds. So this is like a more efficient way than trying to cut towards you. Okay, so that's the carrot. I need more bowls here. All this random stuff. Okay. All right. A couple other tools that you can use for slicing thin would be a mandolin. I have one here. There's the guard. Looks like this. Kind of a big one. There are some settings here. There's a knob over here on this side. So there's a very sharp blade here, and then there's a knob that moves this part up and down, and that controls the depth or the thickness of your slice. And then we have the guard here. So for my pickled vegetables today, I was thinking about doing some radishes. So here I have a nice fat radish. Just another tool that would be handy are some different kinds of brushes, so you can clean your veggies. This one is an OXO brand. It has plastic bristles, which I can throw in the dishwasher, which I like. And then I have another one which has some kind of, I don't know if this is a boar bristle or what it is, but it says vegetable brush on it, and it has kind of a thicker, more coarse bristle, and then there's a more soft one for things like zucchini and squash and things that don't have very thick skins. So for my radish, I'm going to just trim off the top, and then there's some little teeth in here. I'm going to grab it with my I'm just going to run it across. Always use the guard. Okay, mandolins, you can have super bad cuts with this tool. For some reason I'm getting stuck here on the bottom part. There we go. Okay, once I get to this point, I'm going to stop because I know it's not going to go through. All right, so here I have some nice little paper thin slices of radish, which I'm going to use for my pickled veggies. And I'm going to go ahead and put those in my jar. Jar, it's a scrap. Okay, and I think I'll add some, what else do I have over here? I have some fennel left over from a soup. Let's see here. So this is half of the bowl of fennel. I only needed half of the soup. So there's a little triangular core in here. I'm gonna cut out the triangular core bit. And I think I'm just gonna do this into some thin slices. So I'm gonna tuck this in away. And I'm just gonna use my knife skills and get rid of this top part. I'm just gonna do some thin slices. So again, you can see how I'm holding this with my left hand. The point of that is the blade is gonna run into my knuckles, which is no big deal, and I'm not gonna chop off my fingertips. So my fingertips stay tucked under, and the blade is definitely hitting my knuckle on this hand, which is kind of helping to guide my knife back. Okay. All right, so we'll put some fennel in there. Let's see what else we have here. I think we'll do some carrot ribbons. Why not? There is another carrot. Give this a quick peel. So I could just keep peeling this and just do the peelings in the little pickled container that I have. Or I could do slices. So I think I'm gonna do some slices. Now this is a little bit roly-poly. So, you know, if you're just doing a soup or something and it doesn't really matter what it looks like, I highly recommend cutting this in half lengthwise and then putting it down. You always want to try to have a flat, stable surface on your vegetable before you start slicing. So I'm going to do kind of like an angle here. Just a little carrot bits. Okay. All right, throw those in. Okay, I think I'll put in another radish, but this time I'm just going to slice it. And again, you know, here we have another round vegetable. So I'm going to cut this in half. Again, I have a nice stable surface so it's not rolling around. I'm going to slice it. Okay, and there's always this little end part which isn't going to get chopped up. Okay. All right. So here's my little rainbow container of veggies ready to get pickled. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the pickling liquid. The water is already in my pan. You want to make sure you're using a non-reactive pan, which is like stainless steel, and a non-reactive jar or bowl for your vegetables, which I recommend glass. So this is just like a little, kind of like a little canning jar, you know, with the lid. It happens to have a handle on it. I'm not sure where it came from. So my water is in here, and then I'm going to add a cup of rice vinegar. So I'm using a liquid measuring cup. They look like this to do the liquid. This is also an OXO product. I like it because they have the lines on the inside, so I can just stand here and watch it and not have to do the routine where you're pouring and then you're looking and then you're pouring and then you're looking. So they're kind of handy. So a cup of rice vinegar and 1 cup of water go in here. I'm going to add a little extra of white wine vinegar. 6% acidity is great. This one happens to be 7%, so close enough. So I'm going to do about 1/3 of a cup here. Okay. And then I'm going to add some kind of sweetener. I have just some sugar. It's like some kind of an organic. It looks like it's not quite sugar in the raw, but it's like a granulated sugar. So 3 tablespoons of that. 2, 3. And then we have a couple teaspoons of kosher salt. I keep my kosher salt in a little bowl like this because I want to just pinch and sprinkle. I don't really shake it out of a shaker. So 2 teaspoons of the salt, and then we're ready to put it on the stove. Okay, so vinegar, water, the other vinegar, sugar, salt, and that's it. Super simple. Okay, so I just started that. Sorry, my allergies are kicking in here. All right, so I'm going to just heat that up to a simmer until it dissolves, the sugar and the salt, and then we're just going to pour it into my little jar, and then I'm going to let it sit out and cool to room temperature, and then once it's done cooling, I will put the lid on and put it in the fridge, and it'll keep in the fridge for at least a couple weeks. There are optional additions that you can add, so I have, mustard seeds, I have black mustard seeds as well as yellow mustard seeds here. I've got some fennel seeds, I've got red pepper flakes, it's up to you. I'm going to throw in a little bit of fennel seed, and ooh, that smells good. Kind of go with the fennel that's in there. And what else? I think, if I add the red pepper flakes, I think that's going to overpower the flavor of the other things. So I'm going to throw in a little mustard seed. We'll just do those too. You could also do peppercorns. There's a list of these options on the recipe. Oh, the recipe. Allison, you want to show that? We'll show the recipe really quick, which you can also find on our website at sustainablesolano.org. So here's the recipe I'm working through. Everything is on the stove right now. There's a list of optional, oh, you know what? Garlic. Yeah, I'm going to throw in some of this green garlic that I just sliced up. Stick some of that in there too. So you don't really want to pack everything in here too much. You just kind of want to loosely, I would say a loose pack is good. Okay, thanks, Allison. So again, these recipes are posted on our website. If you just go to the local food page on our website, you'll see some links toward about 2/3 of the way down, and you'll have this recipe and some other past recipes that we've done too. Okay, so all right, so that's, while we're waiting for that mixture over there to simmer, I'm just gonna talk about a couple other products which are growing and happening right now and how to work with them. So really quick, let's see what we're doing. Oh yeah, we're good on time. So asparagus, it is asparagus season, hooray. As you probably have noticed, you have a white part of the asparagus down here and then the rest is green. So in order to trim this, you can just bend it and this will naturally pop off. So the tough part pops off and separates from the rest of this, what are these things called? Spear, the rest of the spear. So I'm going to toss out the white part. You could also peel the asparagus. I would recommend kind of cutting off some of the white part because it's pretty tough. But then if you still have some toward the bottom here, part of the stalk, you can definitely just peel maybe 1 inch or so, which will, keep you from wasting some of your asparagus. And that'll help tenderize it when you cook it. So those are 2 different options for working with the asparagus spears. And herbs. All right, here's some parsley from my garden. The best way that I would recommend keeping herbs fresh is putting them in a glass of water. So this is, I just plopped this in here today, but if I was going to keep this for more than a couple of days, I would put it in the water and then just put like a little plastic bag around it and put the whole thing into the refrigerator. In fact, if you have herbs that are kind of droopy, maybe you brought them home from the store or somewhere. Sorry, I hear this thing over here. That's fine. I had some cilantro about a week ago that was, it had been left out for a while. I didn't get it in the fridge fast enough. And so actually it was in my CSA box, and I didn't get it put away until like 11 p.m. And I just put the cilantro into some water, and then just took like a grocery bag, one of those vegetable bags that are from the store. You could even use a Ziploc or any kind of reusable bag. I just kind of stuck it around. You don't have to rubber band the bag or anything. It just kind of helps to keep it enclosed. And then I just stuck it on the door of my refrigerator, in the water glass, and it perked it right up. So in like basil season, and even now, if I knew I'd be using this parsley in the next couple of days, I could just keep it on my counter just like this, and it would be fine. It's kind of like, think about flowers, a vase of flowers in some water. That's kind of what we have here. So that's how I would keep herbs. Once you've washed your herbs and want to keep them in the fridge, I would layer them into a container with some paper towels, because you want them to stay as dry as possible. Same with lettuce and any other leafy things. And for those of you that have been on these classes before, I'm a big fan of the salad spinner. So here's how you want to deal with herbs and lettuce and any kind of leafy things. You want to fill up your big bowl of water with a big bowl with water, and then put your herbs in, or your lettuce. Slosh it around a lot. You want to get rid of the dirt. And what will happen is that the dirt and any sediment will settle to the bottom of the bowl, and your leaves or herbs will float. And so then you can pull off your greenery from the top of the water, and then put it in your salad spinner, and then give it a spin. And then once that's dry, again, I would pack it into a container with some paper towels, or even some kitchen towels. You can cut apart some old kitchen towels that you just use for your veggies or your leafy greens, and have that available, and then put it in the fridge. So that's the lettuce. What else do I have here? Peas. I just wanted to show really quick, there's shelling peas showing up possibly at farmers markets and also in CSA boxes right now. And so these, for these peas, the pods are not edible. So I want to just use the interior legumes that are inside. So to get to them, I find it easiest to twist it. So when you twist it open, it'll start to kind of break along the seam. And then you just, run your thumb down and pop out the actual peas. So these are called shelling peas. They're not the snap peas. If these were snap peas, then we could eat the whole thing. We don't have to shell them. But for the shelling peas, again, we're just gonna kind of twist, open, and then get the peas out. Once you shell these little guys, they are pretty perishable, so you wanna cook them within a couple of days. In the pods, they'll keep in the fridge for at least a week, for sure, at least. So that's the peas. And then I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was just citrus. This is another handy tool. This is a Microplane, and I think that is the brand. It's the thing and it's the brand. And so this is great for getting zest off of citrus. And the reason I like it is because the little metal blades don't come up too far, and what will happen is it really only takes off the outer zest part. If I try to keep zesting in the same place, it's like something about the oil, not really the oily part, but it's like the slippery part of the pith. It doesn't really end up getting zested off. So this is handy for lemons, oranges, any of those things. And again, the scraper. Okay. I think I've covered just about everything over here except for the potato. And again, I was just going to explain that, you want to try to get a flat surface when you're cutting. So you go straight through. I have my flat surface, and then I'm just going to make planks. And then, again, this is just dicing a potato. Depending on how fancy you want to get, if you want really like little cubes, then you would cut the planks across into evenly sized little sticks, kind of like a French fry. And then once you have your French fries, you're going to line them up and go across, same size cut, again, into cubes. So there's my little potato cubes. Okay, I know that my brining liquid is done, so I'm going to bring that over and add it to my little veggie concoction here. so I'm just gonna ladle this in while it's hot, because the heat will help activate the herbs, not the herbs, the spices. It's really the seeds, the fennel seeds and the mustard seeds that we put in. I'm just gonna fill it all the way to the top. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just gonna let this cool down without the lid on until it gets to about room temperature. And then we'll put the lid on and put it in the fridge. And then that is done. So, and hopefully I'll have some pickled veggies for a taco or something. So, okay, let's see. What else? Oh, one other piece of equipment I'm gonna talk about really quick, which is a scale. So this is a digital scale. The brand is Salter. This is another handy thing for measuring, you know, weights of vegetables and whatever. So you can put things on it. After you turn it on, you can put things on, or you can put a bowl on and tear it, you know, then you hit the on button and then it'll clear, and then you can measure what's in your bowl. So another handy tool to have. What else did I drag out? I think that's about it. You know, this is just another kind of mandolin that I've had. This is a cheaper version. Benreiner is what it's called. It's, you know, it's smaller, it's plastic, it's a little less complicated. It just has a couple of blades you can put in here for different things, but there's not as much going on as the other one with all the different adjustments and things. So, I mean, there are adjustments, but the other one you can actually do, like, it'll slice it and make French fries at the same time. So this one I think will just slice in different ways. So,